Coming in at number 5, Chicago Zone, number 83, Martell Bennett. He had 90 catches on the season, 916 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 43 first downs. In standard ESPN draft, his ADP was 100, which is the 10th round, and he ended up the season as a top 5 tight end. Talk about some value. Ever since Brandon Marshall got hurt, he was Jay Cutler's favorite target. As they struggled, he didn't. Jay Cutler would target him at least 10 or more times a game. I don't know what's going to happen to Chicago Bears offense with Brandon Marshall, Jay Cutler not being there, but Martell Bennett had a great 2014-2015 fantasy NFL season.
First down at the 22. Has Olsen.
Mr. Consistency, number 88, Greg Olsen, comes in at number 4. On the season, he had 16 games played, 84 catches, 1,008 yards, 12 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns, and 56 first downs. That equals to 131 fantasy points at ESPN standard leagues. He's Mr. Consistent for a reason. Greg Olsen is tough and he'll suit up every single Sunday and get you fantasy points. If you want the 8 to 10 fantasy points, Greg Olsen is your guy. I expect him to do this year in and year out for the Carolina Panthers and your fantasy football team. Jimmy Graham of the New Orleans Saints comes in at number 3, the first tight end taken in fantasy drafts last year, sometimes even going in the first round selection. He couldn't replicate the historic season he had last year, but he turned it for a solid year with 85 catches, 889 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 54 first downs, and that made him have 137 fantasy points in ESPN standard leagues. He missed 2 games with a nagging shoulder injury, but he was still Drew Brees' go-to guy. He targeted him a lot, and the Saints used him in a majority of ways. Putting him in the slot, putting him as a regular tight end, and sometimes put him one-on-one as a mismatch in coverage. If Jimmy Graham can get that shoulder injury back to where he's 100%, I expect Jimmy Graham to be a top 3 tight end year after year. Coming in at number 2 is Mr. Father Time himself, Antonio Gates of the San Diego Chargers. On the season, he had 69 catches, 821 yards, 12 touchdowns, 44 first downs, and averaged just under 12 yards a catch. Before the season, Mr. Gates shed 10 to 15 pounds before reporting in training camp, making him quicker and more faster than ever. Before the fantasy season, fantasy owners were worried that the young tight end Ladarius Green would split time with Gates and even taking his job. But as Gates continued to produce, it left Green on the bench and him on the football field. Gates even had a couple of multi-touchdown games, even a 3-touchdown game in Seattle. Don't sleep on Antonio Gates when you draft your fantasy football team next season. Rob Gronkowski of the New England Patriots. Fantasy owners were skeptical of taking him in the draft last year because of his injury history, but if you took a gamble on him in the 3rd or 4th round, it definitely paid off because he had a great season. 82 catches, 1,124 yards, 12 touchdowns, 60 first downs, and averaged 13.7 yards per catch, and had 3 100-yard games and 2 90-yard games. Gronkowski was dominating the league, scoring touchdowns and doing Gronk smashes all over the end zones in the NFL. Gronkowski was Tom Brady's favorite target, getting 9 to 10 targets a game, and that is major production from the tight end level. I expect Rob Gronkowski to be the number 1 tight end taken in fantasy drafts next season.